Hey, so this is a little share from a recent question. Someone wanted to know, how does trial work period get calculated when it comes to someone like an Uber driver? So obviously, if we're asking about trial work period, it's someone who is either thinking of claiming for Social Security disability, is in the middle of a claim, or has already prevailed and has either started to work as an Uber driver or is thinking of doing so. Okay. The quick answer is it's the same calculation as it is for any other person who is self-employed. And basically, Uber driving, Lyft, Instacart driver. I'm just naming some of the big names. I don't mean to leave anybody out. But they're the ones everyone tends to know. And they provided a really interesting economic opportunity for people who maybe can't keep set hours, need to work flexible hours depending on how they feel. Or it could be depending on other things in their life, like caretaking for somebody. And so some certain hours are free for whatever reason. And it could be great for students and retirees as well. So it's really, I think it's been, a great opportunity for people who are not able to have a cut and dried schedule, particularly if they can't do a full-time schedule. So it has provided opportunity for income and survival, and extra money for a lot of different people. So, of course, if you're one of those people that we're talking about that's thinking of filing, has filed, did win, thinking of working, etc., when it comes to Social Security disability, the trial work period is something that a lot of people who are aware of it decide they want to never leave or get into. I should say it that way. They don't want to ever start their trial work period. So, of course, just as a refresher, to start your trial work period, you have to be working part-time, earning at least the trial work period amount. So in 2023, that number has been $1,050 per month. In 2024, I believe it's going up to $1,100. So if you stay below that number, you will never trigger a trial work period month. You will never trigger the first month, and therefore you don't have to worry about triggering all 9 months of doing so. And remember, the 9 months need not be consecutive. You could have 1 month trial work period, not work again for several, do another one that happens to hit or exceed trial work period amount, and you can get your 9 months. You can get them in 9 months. It could take much longer. But as long as those 9 months are born within a 5-year rolling scrolling window, 60 months, it will mark the end of your trial work period. And that is when you drop into your extended period of eligibility. Okay, so we're not going to go into that. But I just want to address this one thing the person was asking about, which was, how is it calculated? I think I've alluded to before, when we are a W-2 employee someplace, it is much easier because what we get on our W-2 is our number, by and large, right? That's our starting point and often our ending point as to what is our income and is it over trial work period. And I say that is our starting point because if you have work-related expenses that are deductible, so to speak, with the under IRS rules, they may be able to be deducted from the gross wages as an employee, or anybody else, to get it below trial work period. You cannot use impairment-related work expenses to drop you below the TWP amount. You can use that later on for the SGA amount to drop it below, but not the TWP amount. Impairment-related work expenses do not apply. So when a particular person is a gigger, like a driver, a RideShare person, let's just call it that without naming the companies again, or a variety of other things, that is a form of self-employment. You are your own business, as we all are when we're self-employed. I'm one of them. and there's different ways self-employed people get paid, right? Sometimes a person is a self-employed yard guy, mowing lawns. He is probably going to be getting cash or a check given to him by the customer, a homeowner or a tenant who wants their lawn mowed. Maybe he's on PayPal getting it that way. Like there could be payment things now that we have technologies that different from when I was young. So that individual doesn't get a W-2, of course, because he's not an employee. He is his own employer and he is his own employee. He's self-employed. My eye's still going. Yes, it is. So he will not likely be getting a 1099 either because homeowners don't tend to do that, right? Because I don't think they have to. However, other kinds of self-employment, there are 1099s issued by the customer who we're doing the service for. And these tend to be when big companies hire contractors. And that's what these rideshare companies tend to do. And then they issue a 1099 at the end. Now, a 1099, I think the IRS rule still is, don't hold me to it, I'm not a tax person, $600 or more if a company wants to write off this expense because they don't necessarily have receipts for paying it, although they might and they could, but if they want to write it off, I believe the IRS requires that they issue a 1099 to the contractor doing the work. In rideshare, that would be the driver. And of course, when we start with a company like that, we are generally required to provide a certain document, IRS document that tells them our name, our address, our social, or if we use some sort of other number for reporting our taxes. And that's what we do first, so that when year end comes, they can issue the 1099 that says, hey, we paid you $4,000 this year. And then they submit they file the 1099s, but they also may use them at tax time too. And that's going to give them that $4,000 business expense. And then the IRS, of course, knows who to go after to make sure that whoever received the 1099, the gigger, has reported his taxes. So it's a little double check system, right? So to make sure everybody's paying. So if someone is a self-employed person that gets a 1099, such as a gigger, meaning a gigger with the main customer being, say, a rideshare company, there might be giggers for like big companies like Amazon. I don't know all the 1099 issuers out there. Usually, if you can pick your own schedule and pick your own hours, they will probably 1099 you. It's a little different from an employee who doesn't get to do that. There's less control. That's why we're contractors. We have a little bit more control over what we do, what we pick. So if you are a person bringing in income, part-time working as a gigger, and you want to stay under TWP, you need to make sure that you keep your hours low enough. And it's hard when you're getting paid tips. Very hard. I know one person doing a rideshare program who made sometimes these crazy, crazy tips. And the person might put it on their credit card instead of just giving it cash. And of course, technically cash, you're supposed to be reporting that as part of your income. So says the IRS. So it is somewhat of a dangerous job if you're going to do it and flirt with the TWP amount. It'll be very easy to go over. And so you can expect to be losing your trial work period in the 9 months if you do that. Because again, let's say it's 2024 and it's $1,100. You're like, well, I'm only going to do X amount. And I find out when I do 10 hours a month, I only make X amount and I'm safe and below that. Okay, that could be true if you're well below it, but you might find that you get a crazy tip one day of like, $600. Stranger things have happened. And now you're over. And that would be a trial work period month, unless, and here's the benefit of being self-employed, that you couldn't do if you were a W-2 employee. When we do our Schedule Cs or whatever schedule it is for self-employed people, there might be a couple different ones. I think I do a Schedule C, but you get your net revenue. That's the money you pull in. Then you have to subtract your business expenses. If you're the guy mowing lawns, you're going to be subtracting gasoline, probably wear and tear on that lawnmower. Maybe you had to buy the lawnmower. Maybe you have to depreciate it. All these little tax things. You might want to use a tax preparer, actually. So you figure out what the monthly expenses are. Let's say there's things you pay the whole year for, like let's say it's liability insurance, or car insurance. Maybe that's something you can write off, if you're doing ride sharing. Maybe it's liability insurance if you're doing yard work. Gasoline, mileage. Mileage is huge, huge. So you want to make sure that if you are going to be over that trial work period month, and your aim is to never get into trial work period, or certainly never pop out of it. It's not so bad getting into it, but if you use your 9 months up, now you're out of it and you're in your extended period of eligibility, which comes with it some increased risk. So you want to keep track of those legitimate business expenses and make sure you avail yourself of them to the extent you need to keep yourself legitimately under trial work period amount. Now, trial work period when you're self-employed, I believe, and I will throw the link down when I come across it again, for the purposes of trial work period when we're self-employed, because we have the ability to write things off, and technically, apparently people smarter than me can really fudge with numbers and stuff like that. They also have an hours limited. So let's say you're well under trial work period, but you are working 100 hours a month. That would be a trial work period month, even if you're not hitting that 1050 or 1100, whichever year you're doing it, in terms of net income from self-employment after the business expenses. 80 hours, I think, is if you hit 80, you're now working substantially, and as a self-employed person, at least generally speaking. So keep track of your hours, make sure they're well below, and of course, keep track of your money. If your gross receipts from your gigging work each month is less than TWP amount, then the expenses are not going to be so important because you're already below. You might be writing off your expenses so you pay less taxes. Now, obviously, if you're not making that much, you're not going to pay federal taxes, as long as we still have the Tax Reform Act that came out in 2017, because that increased our federal deduction to like over $12,000 for an individual. So that first $12,000, you're not going to get federally taxed at all. But if you live in a state or a locale like I do, where they tax you quite egregiously, you still got to pay taxes depending on what state you live in, voted in, whatever. So as a rideshare self-employed person, keep track of those hours, keep them well under, keep track of your revenues coming in, and keep track of your business expenses. Again, and I don't know if I finished the sentence, if you have a whole year payment that covers the whole year, let's say it's liability insurance, and you pay a whole premium, you would divide that up by the 12, right? I think there's other things that you could probably do that with too. But each person is going to be individual how they run their business, their self-employed business, because we are all little self-employed businesses, right? Keep track of it, trial work period, stay under the amount, and use your business expenses to help you do that if you need to. If you do bump into trial work period, it's not the end of the world, but you want to know before you bump out of it. That's why you need to keep track, so that if you're getting close to bumping out of it, you have to maybe change things in a drastic way. If your goal is to not bump out of your trial work period. Many people are out of their trial work period. A lot of people never even concern themselves with it, and they only worry about SGA. They are very confident in their medical disabilities that they will not be found medically not disabled. They will always be disabled under the medical rules, under their continuing treatment and all the records confirming that they're just as limited as they always were, and they can only do this part-time work. They're not concerned. But if you don't know whether you are, and you are concerned and you want to be extra cautious, that's when you fly under the trial work period. And of course, keeping diligent medical treatment and follow-up. So you can prove, because eventually we all get a CDR. So you're going to want to have all your medical proofs in your most recent year or two, showing that you've been diligently following up. The problem still exists. The severity has not improved, or at least not very notably, and you're still disabled. And when we say disabled, it means from working full-time at a job that exists in substantial numbers in the local or regional economy. It does not mean unable to do part-time work. And that's why gigger work is just fine. Okay. But you have to be very, very careful and follow everything. So I hope I answered that question about how do they deal with trial work period calculated for a rideshare person. Same way as any other self-employed person. They look at all these little factors we're talking about in here. So you want to keep your notebook. Really, I would, whether it's weekly or monthly, you're documenting. Certainly the revenues coming in, which you can usually get from your bank account, because I think they're direct deposited. And I think these bigger companies that do these ride shares, they have online access where you can see what you put in. I know there might be, well, I mean, what do you consider work? Do you consider it the commute to pick up the person, or is that a commute? Although it's not necessarily a commute, but what you're really working when you have that client in your car, perhaps, and when you drop him off. Now you still have mileage getting to him, and you still have mileage when you have him, and you still have mileage when you go back to home base. So those are all things to consider when you're wanting to get a write-off off of that revenue on your Schedule C, which would also then be used for, Social Security purposes to show that your net income from self-employment was under TWP after all was said and done. And remember to keep those hours in check. All right. All right. I hope that explains it. Bye, guys.